The heavy gold ring clock in the Zhang family mansion struck 8, its chime echoing through the vast, marble-floored hallway. Meilin sat at the polished mahogany dining table, picking at her breakfast with a silver fork. Her school uniform, a bespoke silk blend blazer with the crest of the elite Shanghai International Academy, was pressed to perfection. She was the only daughter of Zhang Wei, a real estate mogul whose influence stretched across the skyline of Pudong. To Meilin, the world was divided into two types of people, those who own the buildings, and those who clean them. Her driver, Mr. Chen, stood by the door, hat in hand. He had been waiting for 20 minutes, but Meilin didn't care. Time was something other people spent for her. When she finally rose, she didn't thank the maid who pulled back her chair. She simply grabbed her designer leather backpack, a limited edition piece that cost more than most people earned in a year, and walked out to the waiting black sedan. The drive to school was a blur of neon signs and towering skyscrapers. As the car pulled up to the school gates, Meilin saw a girl walking toward the entrance. It was Li Hua. Li Hua lived in a cramped apartment in an older district, the kind of place Meilin's father would likely demolish to build a luxury mall. Li Hua was wearing the same uniform, but it was faded from too many washes, and her shoes were scuffed. But what caught Meilin's eye was Li Hua's bag. It was a simple, sturdy canvas bag with a small, hand-embroidered lotus flower on the pocket. It was clean, but it was undeniably cheap. Meilin felt a surge of inexplicable irritation. She didn't like how Li Hua always held her head high, as if being the top student in mathematics made her equal to someone with a billionaire father. As they entered the locker area, Meilin decided to remind Li Hua of the natural order of things. "Is that a new bag, Li Hua?" Meilin asked, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. Her two friends, echoing her every move, giggled behind her. Li Hua turned, a small, polite smile on her face. "No, Meilin. My mother made it for me last year. It's very strong." Meilin reached out and touched the canvas with a look of faint disgust. "Strong? It looks like a potato sack. I didn't know the school allowed people to carry trash into the classrooms. It's an eyesore, really. It ruins the aesthetic of the hallway." Li Hua's smile faltered, but she didn't look away. "It carries my books just fine. That is what a bag is for." "A bag is a statement," Meilin hissed, her ego bruised by Li Hua's lack of shame. "And your statement says you don't belong here." In a sudden, impulsive move, Meilin grabbed the strap of the canvas bag. Li Hua tried to pull back, but Meilin was fueled by a cruel adrenaline. With a sharp tug and a deliberate twist, the worn stitching of the strap gave way. The bag fell to the floor, and because the bottom had been thinned by years of use, it hit the corner of the metal locker and tore open. Li Hua's books, her carefully sharpened pencils, and a small wooden lunchbox spilled across the floor. The hallway went silent. Even Meilin's friends stopped laughing. Li Hua knelt down, her hands trembling as she reached for the wooden box, which had cracked on impact. "Oops," Meilin said, though there was no regret in her eyes. "Maybe now your mother can sew you something that doesn't look like it came from a dumpster. Consider it a favor." Meilin turned on her heel and walked away, leaving Li Hua on her knees in the middle of the hallway. That evening, the Zhang mansion was unusually quiet. Meilin's mother, Mrs. Zhang, was waiting in the sunroom. Unlike Meilin, who took pride in her sharpness, Mrs. Zhang was known for her quiet elegance and her deep involvement in traditional arts. She was sipping tea from a delicate porcelain cup when Meilin walked in, tossing her expensive leather bag onto a silk sofa. "How was school, Meilin?" her mother asked softly. "Fine," Meilin muttered. "Just had to deal with some low-class behavior." Mrs. Zhang set her tea down. "Actually, I received a call from the headmaster today. He mentioned an incident in the hallway. Something about a torn bag." Meilin rolled her eyes. "It was an accident, mother. And honestly, I did her a favor. That thing was falling apart anyway." Mrs. Zhang looked at her daughter for a long time. There was no anger in her gaze, only a profound sadness that made Meilin feel more uncomfortable than a lecture ever could. "Come with me," her mother said, rising from her chair. They didn't go to the jewelry vault or the walk-in closet. Instead, they went to the attic, a place Meilin rarely visited. Mrs. Zhang unlocked an old, lacquered wooden chest. Inside, wrapped in acid-free paper, was a small, faded blue dress and a pair of worn-out cloth shoes. "What is this?" Meilin asked, confused. "This was my favorite outfit when I was your age," Mrs. Zhang said, her voice nostalgic. "Your grandfather was a laborer. He spent 3 months' worth of savings to buy me these shoes so I could walk to school without getting blisters. We were not always the Zhangs you know now, Meilin. We were the people you looked down on." Meilin stepped back, stunned. Her parents never talked about the struggle, only the success. I kept these to remind myself that wealth is a shadow, Mrs. Zhang continued. It grows in the sun and disappears in the dark. The only thing that stays is how you treat people when you have the power to hurt them. Today, you used your father's shadow to try and dim someone else's light. That is not how I raised you. Mrs. Zhang took out a beautiful, hand-woven silk scarf, an heirloom from her own grandmother. Tomorrow, you will not take the car. You will take the bus. And you'll take this to Li Hua. Not as a gift from a superior, but as an apology from a classmate who forgot her own roots. The next morning, the air was humid and heavy. Meilin stood at the bus stop, feeling exposed and vulnerable without the tinted windows of the sedan. Her feet ached and her designer loafers as she stood among the commuters. When she reached the school, she didn't head for the lockers. She waited by the gate. When Li Hua appeared, she was carrying her books in her arms. She looked tired, her eyes slightly red. Meilin felt a lump in her throat that no amount of money could swallow. She stepped forward, blocking Li Hua's path. Li Hua flinched slightly, expecting another taunt. I brought you something, Meilin said, her voice small. She reached into her bag and pulled out a brand new, high-quality backpack, not a flashy designer one, but a sturdy, elegant one made of fine waterproof fabric. Inside the front pocket, she had tucked her mother's silk scarf. Li Hua looked at the bag, then at Meilin. I don't want your charity, Meilin. It's not charity, Meilin said, her voice cracking. It's an apology. I was wrong. My mother told me that a bag is just a tool, but a heart is what carries the person. I broke your bag, and I realized I was trying to break your spirit because I didn't have the strength you have. Please. Take it. And the scarf, it belonged to my grandmother. My mother wants you to have it because she says you have the grace of a lady. Li Hua looked at the scarf, the intricate embroidery catching the morning light. She saw the genuine shame in Meilin's eyes. Slowly, she reached out and took the bag. Thank you, Meilin, Li Hua said quietly. Can I help you carry your books? Meilin asked. For the first time, the two girls walked into the school side by side. The students watched in whispers, expecting a confrontation, but they saw something much rarer, a bridge being built over a gap that everyone thought was too wide to cross. Over the following weeks, the change in Meilin was visible to everyone. She stopped spending her lunch hours gossiping about brands and started sitting with Li Hua, who helped her with her calculus. Meilin learned that Li Hua's mother was a seamstress who worked 18 hours a day to keep her daughter in that school. She learned that the wooden lunchbox had been carved by Li Hua's late grandfather. One afternoon, Meilin invited Li Hua to the mansion. When they arrived, Meilin didn't lead her to the grand staircase. They went to the garden, where Mrs. Zhang was planting peonies. Mother, this is Li Hua, Meilin announced. Mrs. Zhang stood up, wiping the soil from her hands, and gave Li Hua a warm, genuine smile. It is an honor to meet the girl who taught my daughter the most important lesson of her life. They sat in the garden, drinking tea not as the rich and the poor, but as three people sharing a moment under the same sun. Meilin realized that her mother was right. The silk blazer she wore didn't make her skin any warmer, and the gold in her house didn't make her heart any fuller. Years later, the Zhang fortune would fluctuate, as all fortunes do. But Meilin never forgot that morning at the bus stop. She went on to run her father's company, but her first act as CEO was to establish a scholarship for students from the district where Li Hua had grown up. She didn't call it the Zhang Scholarship. She called it the Lotus Foundation, named after the small flower embroidered on a canvas back that had once been torn in a hallway, only to be replaced by a friendship that could never be broken. The lesson of the rich girl wasn't about the bag at all. It was about the realization that the only true wealth is the kindness we extend to others when we think they have nothing to offer us. In the end,